Hey everybody, welcome again to another episode of the ShopNotes Podcast. It's episode number 183. I'm Phil with Logan and John today, and we're going to get some reader feedback on last week's episode about table saw blade sharpening, as well as some just fun project updates and following where our spirit animals lead us. Special thanks. This episode of the ShopNotes Podcast is presented by Epilogue Laser. You can quickly and easily customize your woodworking projects for added beauty and value. Learn more at epiloguelaser.com. All right. Now, the number of people that replied to our episode about table saw blade sharpening is kind of amazing. It's so clearly people are getting their table saw blades sharpened in greater numbers than I think.
Yep. Which is funny because I had somebody else unrelated to the podcast message me and say, hey, I know you know people in Des Moines. Is there anybody in town that sharpens table saw blades? Completely unrelated. It was just like the universe converging on the topic.
So I'm going to read just a few of them here. One, Mark Carrera says, we have a local sharpening shop in Albuquerque. I have a 12-inch Freud combo blade. I take it to them about once a year. Last time they replaced 4 tips and sharpened the blade for about $40. Turn around in less than a week. I took a 10-inch Freud dado blade once, but forgot the cost. Howard Cooper says, just finished watching episode 182. I seldom, if ever, comment on any YouTube videos, but decided to share my experience. Also, I have watched all your YouTube videos and anticipated the future ones. In 2022, I sent 2 older Freud 24-tooth and 50-tooth blades to Ridge Carbide to have them sharpened. Previously, I had thought that it was probably too costly. However, I decided that $18 and $22 was an acceptable price for a couple of older but quality blades. As I recall, they turned them around in about 2 weeks. Shipping was about $10, but probably more now. So for about $60, I have 2 very usable blades. As is often said, I didn't realize how dull they were until started using them after they've been sharpened. Since then, I've acquired 2 Ridge Carbide blades and recently their 8-inch dado stack. I'm looking to use the dado blades whenever it warms up, hopefully this coming week. Dan Lender, just saw podcast 182. You do not know what you're missing. Send your blades to WD Quinn, $15 for resharpening. You will get the blade back and it will be better than new. They're a top shelf company located in the St. Louis area. Logan, while you're in St. Louis, if you want to tour their facility, I will set it up for you. Let me know. They're cheaper and better than the competition. When I was looking for a dovetail special grind blade, Forrest wanted $185 in 6 months. Quinn wanted $119 in 3 days. If I would have brought them an old blade, it would have been probably less than the $40. There you go.
The one thing that I learned about blade sharpening is if you're getting a dado set sharpened, don't just send in the outside blades. Send in the whole set. Because it changes the diameter slightly. So when I got it back, it was like, like, so the outside blades were slightly narrower diameter than the inside blade, so it made a little step effect. So get them all sharpened together.
That is true, and I think we did that here at the shop once.
Yeah, I think it was the set at the video studio, the old video studio. So now you know.
Now you know.
I feel like there would be a good market there for purposefully grinding a blade that way for a locking rabbit blade.
Maybe we got something here.
Huh.
You know,
Yeah, maybe.
you put a side in a tenoning jig, and then you have like a stepped blade that does like the deep groove and then the tongue in one pass.
Hmm.
Don't
We did get a blade.
This is brilliant.
Was it the custom ground blade for the dovetail jig or something?
Yeah.
7-degree grind on it. So maybe combine that somehow.
That
like
one
a
we did get
custom ground dovetail dado blade.
Yeah.
We got something here.
These are all ideas.
Yeah, we're opening up new realms of geometry here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, next thing that people are going to be doing is making a really wide blade and then putting molding knives in it.
Whoa.
For the table saw.
That just blew my mind.
I know.
I would like to know what SawStop's stance is on the molding head cutter.
Pure bypass mode.
Pure bypass. You have to put 2 dado cartridges on.
Mm-hmm. So, kind of on this note, I had an epiphany yesterday. It was actually an email that came from Woodpeckers, and I think I shared it with you. Maybe it was 2 days ago, Phil. The dado nut. Come on. Like, Woodpeckers released a dado, they call it the dado nut.
You're like, I thought of that. Why didn't I why didn't I make them?
Well, yeah, I was like, for years, I'm like, why are people not just like threading the flange on a table saw? Because you stack up a really wide dado blade, you can't fit the flange on with the nut, so you just end up putting just the nut on. But Woodpeckers, you son of bitches, you did it. You did it.
Crazy. It's so crazy it just might work.
Did I order one? Maybe. But what I'm kind of confused about is it says it's for SawStop table saws.
Yeah.
And I think Phil discovered that our Grizzly table saw has the same thread.
Right.
Yeah.
I
just assumed they all had the same thread.
I did too. I just assumed they were all like a 5/8 inch Acme type.
Yeah,
thread.
5/8 whatever pitch it is. But and I think what threw me is seeing it on in their description, either the description or on the web page for it, like you said, where it was what it was, and then for SawStop saws. And I was like, so does that mean SawStops are different?
Yeah, it's like the name. It says, like, in the title, it says dado nut for SawStop saws.
Yeah.
Like, huh. Okay.
Yeah, because like I said, previously I would have been like, yeah, they're all the same. It's just 5/8.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you know? So you got one?
I ordered one. Yeah, we'll see.
All right. So now normally for these podcasts, Logan, you are out in your workshop.
An Irishman took it over.
Yeah, you're not out there today.
No, we had Pat Carroll in. I still have him in. He's here. Filming our TV show and some classes this week. So he is currently out in the shop grinding away at a couple of parts for some demonstrations that he has scheduled this weekend. So,
all right.
So I could sit out there, and I've been out there most of the morning with him, but can't really record a podcast with a router going zing, zing, zing. So
I think that you can scrub that out.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, fix it in post. Yeah.
All right. So I have discovered something about a project that I made late last year.
Okay.
And this is it. I'll put a photo of it on the show notes page. But what it is a little stand that's designed to hold my wireless charger for my phone, and then my phone on top of it, and then to be on the cabinet next to my bed so that I can use Apple's standby mode. So it gives it like the old school alarm clock kind of look, which I thought would be kind of cool. And the stand actually looks and works pretty well. I'm really happy with it. The only thing that I've discovered is that I noticed that my morning alarms weren't working. And then after a little bit of digging, realized that that's a kind of a known common problem for the standby mode, is that it either disables your alarm. Like one time I woke up just a couple minutes before my alarm, was looking at the phone to see what the time was, and then my alarm came up just like for half a second and then went away. Like it automatically canceled it. So, I mean, part of the reason of having an alarm clock is to have an alarm.
Right.
So that you can wake
Not
up.
if that's my wife, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at first I thought it was a design issue, that because of how much I have it leaning, like is that leaning too far back that it wasn't quite in standby mode. And so I was experimenting whether I needed to trim it so that it would be a little bit more upright. That's not the reason. So it's actually not on me this time, which is kind of fun. So I'm trying to decide whether it's a project success or failure, in the sense that I made it, but it doesn't really work the way it should.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like John and I's wagon wheel we made, the wagon wheel spinner. Was that a success or a failure? We made it. It worked great, but they never used it. But
right.
Yeah. We learned so much, though.
Did we?
Yeah.
Did we?
The next time we need to make a wagon wheel spinner, we're going to be that much better off for it.
Right.
Oh, my God.
I think the
I
sucker
feel like it
part
was
about
like over like Thanksgiving break, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the other sucker part about the wagon wheel spinner is the fact that it looked amazing and should have been a big crowd draw, but instead was just a waste of some really, really good reclaimed redwood, because it never got used.
Yep.
Because you had those, they were like 6x6.
Yeah, they were huge. And I picked the nice ones that didn't. I mean, they had a few holes in them, but I picked like the nicest ones that like were the longest sections of no holes.
Yeah.
Think we get that back? Will Dennis? You think Dennis Voles will bring that back for me?
I think so.
Okay.
I think it would make a really good, at least parts for like a trebuchet or catapult or something.
It would.
It has the look for it. So
yeah. I feel like that's like, we keep talking about like a trebuchet build or something. I feel like that just needs to happen, John. Like if you can just make it happen, that would be great.
I feel like Chris has it in the bank somewhere. He's just not sharing it with us because it's like we're irresponsible.
I mean, he's not wrong.
Hurt ourselves. I don't know.
No, I was saying, I mean, you know.
Yeah. It's like when we get a little bit older, grow up a little bit, he'll bring it out.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, I mean, because we would like launch apples and see if we could get them like over the top of Ingersoll or something like that. Or
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Put it on the roof of the MediaCom building or something.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to like put one up on my deck and just launch squirrels. Like you bait it with birdseed and then just launch the squirrels. Like, I mean, if you throw them into the trees, they're going to catch themselves, right?
Yeah, they'll be fine.
You're not actually going to hurt
squirrels
them.
always land on their feet.
Yeah.
They're resilient like that.
Yeah. They actually enjoy it.
They get to vicariously become flying squirrels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which I didn't realize we have flying squirrels in Iowa, like northern Iowa.
Yeah.
We were out messing around in a timber up in northeast Iowa one time, mushroom hunting, and screwing around, and we like pushed over a dead tree, and like a flying squirrel just flew out of it and just flew to the next tree. I was like, whoa, I didn't know here. And I looked it up. Yeah, there's some in northern Iowa.
Yep.
So
somebody told me that flying squirrels are actually one of the most numerous squirrels in Wisconsin, but you just don't see them because they're not really nocturnal, but like in the evenings. What is that? Crepuscular or something like that?
You're living way ahead of me, Phil. I got nothing on that.
Yeah.
So get this. This is per the Iowa DNR. Flying squirrels live statewide in Iowa, but seeing them is a whole different story. These tiny squirrels are strictly nocturnal, and when they sleep, they hide in tree cavities, making it difficult to catch a glimpse of them. And during the winter, as many as 20 flying squirrels will huddle up in the same hole to stay warm.
Yeah, because
so if you find one, you're gonna find a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. It doesn't. It doesn't really say. It doesn't really say the size of them.
Yeah.
But they're the most carnivorous squirrel.
Whoa! Look out!
They eat insects, invertebrates, eggs, birds, nestlings, and carrion.
Nestlings. That's
Wow.
There's a new fear that I did not know I had.
Yeah. Being stalked.
A nest of 20 carnivorous squirrels.
Do they attack in swarms then? That's
I don't know. Climbing into your tree stand in the 5 a.m. and then all of a sudden attacked by vicious fanged squirrels.
They're the velociraptor of the sky.
I was going to say like Iowa's chupacabra, but maybe that's not far enough.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't know that. That's cool. I mean, I knew we had them, but just not that.
That we had them.
Not many.
Right.
Yeah, well, I knew they were here. I didn't know they lived in my own backyard. Oh, that's funny. It is funny having Pat here for the week. It's interesting. Wood turning's wood turning wherever you go. But the thing that changes is the people and the geography. And it's funny, I'll be making breakfast and Pat will just be standing at my back window for like an hour. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm watching a squirrel. What? He's like, yeah. He's like, this is a joy to me. He's like, we don't have them. I'm like, oh, okay. Wait till you see a turkey. Your mind's going to be blown.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool to have him here. Like we were talking about because he was here to film an episode of the TV show and to do a couple of classes with us.
Yep.
And obviously woodworking is a very personal craft in the sense that you develop unique ways of doing the same thing that other people are doing, but there's always a little twist on it. And especially for somebody like Pat who turns as much as he does, I was surprised on how fast he was on things without it making look like he was fast.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about he was rounding some blanks and it was just like, and it was round.
Mm-hmm.
And I know he's using regular turning tools and I'm usually using carbide tools. And I would say you're a pretty talented turner also, Logan, but like he's faster than you. And it was just amazing to watch.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. And there's definitely a different level of turning between somebody like Pat and myself or Jimmy and myself. And I mean, I think Pat would go as far as to say there's a difference in level between like Jimmy and him, I mean, just the different level. And, Pat's spent the last, decade or two demonstrating all over the world. So it's like you do one of those demonstrations, 45 times, you get real quick at it. You know what I mean? It's like the old talking about people doing hand-cut dovetail demonstrations at the woodworking shows. It's like,
right.
You can have somebody like, I don't know, one of these guys that are masters of dovetails, and they can cut a drawer's worth of dovetails in 3 minutes.
Right.
So it's one of those things, repetition, and it's pretty cool. Well, and Pat's a very artistic guy as well. So some of the things he brings into wood turning, with patinas and, different, he turned some appliques for one of the shields of, and for a class we did. And, it has decorative daggers on it. And it's like he glues those together and turns those 2 at a time.
Right.
And there's split turnings at that point. It's just some of that stuff is really cool. And it's the outside the box type stuff. And some of his really intricate stuff isn't necessarily intricate from like a turning standpoint. And I think Pat would say this as well. There are turners that are very, very technical with their turning, technical with their shapes.
Right.
And then there are turners that aren't as technically sound with their shapes, but make up for it with their other stuff they do. And I think Pat would put himself in that category where he does a lot of stuff after the turning happens. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can see that. The other thing that I noticed is, and I don't know why, it's 2 things that stood out to me. One was he used a very small number of tools for the stuff that he was doing, turning tools. He did a lot with what I would say is a relatively narrow spindle gouge.
Yeah.
Like that was his primary tool. And then only then went to, maybe 2 others, And I don't know if that's because he was traveling, so he's just not bringing along a full kit, or that's just his style either.
I think you get to a level of turning, and you guys know me. I have way more crap than is necessary. So like my selection of turning tools is massive right now. But like if you watch a lot of these turners, like Jimmy does all of his turning with 5 tools. Anything Jimmy does is generally with 5 tools. Pat, same way, maybe 5 tools. You look at somebody like Richard Raffin, he does everything with a 1/2-inch spindle gouge. He turns all his bowls with a 1/2-inch spindle gouge.
Yeah.
Like he does stuff with spindle gouge that you're not supposed to do with spindle gouge. So I think it's probably a combination of knowing how to use the tools, knowing what the limitations of said tool is, and also probably a little bit of efficiency. Like I'm traveling, I'm not going to bring a bunch of tools, or I'm in my shop, I want to get this done, I'm only going to have 5 tools and I'll just make it work, because I don't want to go walk over to my tool cabinet and buy another or grab another tool. And then, from like somebody like Richard Raffin or Mike Mahoney's standpoint, it's that they're production turners. So it's like the more I have to switch tools, the less money I'm making in a day.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that makes sense. The other thing that I noticed, and maybe it's not entirely accurate, but I was surprised at how often he readjusted the tool rest and how close he had the tool rest to the work.
Yep.
Like there were times where it felt like the tool rest was just, millimeters away.
Like you need to sharpen that tool rest if you're going to use it that close.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and some of that is also a function of what you're doing, because there is a point where the tool rest is too close, especially if your tool's riding on the bevel on the tool rest. But yeah, there's a lot of little micro adjustments, and depending on what you're doing, and yeah.
So it's just interesting to see, because it seems like there's other turners that I've watched where, over the course of a project, when you take a goofy shaped piece and then round it, then you've changed the size dramatically. But he wasn't changing. There wasn't a huge difference in size of the workpiece, but just the way he was going, or, the next stages of cuts, he just kept bringing that thing closer and closer. Special thanks. This episode of the ShopNotes podcast is presented by Epilogue Laser. You can quickly and easily customize your woodworking projects for added beauty and value. Learn more at epiloglaser.com. Anything you noticed there, John?
No, I'm still like stuck on. Logan mentioned Master Dovetails a little bit ago, and I'm just like reminiscing. I think I had some of the Masters of Dovetails action figures when I was a kid, like Manny chisels and saw arms. So I've just been thinking about that while you guys have been talking about turning.
Yeah.
Did you guys have those or?
Nope, I didn't.
No?
I didn't. No, I didn't.
So that's what I've been thinking about.
This is why we don't get invited to the family reunions, John.
This is like why sometimes I'm not on the podcast. I'm suspended with pay. It's like you just take the day off. The adults have to talk.
We're gonna give you a little timeout.
Yeah. I think Phil missed John's most interesting moment of the turning week.
Oh yeah,
in the photo studio.
The most interesting.
So I have to sympathize with John because we were. I don't remember what Pat was doing. I don't know. I don't remember what he was doing. He was doing something that was a lot of cutting.
I don't remember what he was doing either.
Well, we know you don't because you were snoring.
Yeah.
So whatever Pat was doing, John sat down. John slated and he sat down on the futon and was kind of watching. And then all of a sudden, our director Bailey and I look at each other and we're like, "What is that noise?" And we look back at John snoring on the futon. Now, I will tell you, if I fall asleep sitting on my couch, 9 times out of 10, I have wood turning on TV. Because it's just the sound of a gouge cutting wood at the lathe is like white noise to a baby, and it just knocks me out. And it was fantastic. It was the perfect moment for the week.
Yeah. And when Bailey said cut, I popped up and I was like, was I snoring?
We're like, oh yeah, you were.
Yeah. It's kind of like when you're driving and you're just like, I'm just going to close my eyes for a second. And then pretty soon you're like, where am I?
It's a straight road.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
That's
hilarious. While we're on the subject of turning, I think Pat has convinced me and I've come to terms with the fact that the Koenig lathe has to go.
Oh, really?
I know. Yeah, okay, because I bought the Powermatic that we had in our shop. It's a nice heavy lathe, and if I get to a point where I really want to start inviting people to come out here and teach, he's like, if you were paying for a class, would you be happy getting stuck on that Koenig? I'm like, well, I would because I think it's cool, but I get your point. And he's like, how long has it been? He's like, you sent me a picture of that Koenig 4 months ago when you first put it in your shop. He's like, have you used it since? And I'm like, you're not wrong, and I'm mad about it.
Fair question.
You're not wrong. So I think for a space thing, I need to let it go. It's not, but it's also an accurate question, and I think that it's one of those things I just need to say, okay, you're right. I probably don't need that lathe because it is the lightest duty of the lathes I have.
Okay. So just to refresh us, what is it about the Koenig lathe? Because if you were to walk into your shop and see all the different lathes that you have going there, other than, do you still have one of the small Deltas?
I do. It's sold. I'm delivering it to a guy next Friday. But yeah,
okay.
It's still in there.
Yeah. So you have several what I would call full-size lathes. And to somebody just, to John and I walking into your shop, it's not like doing a quick survey. You'd be able to go and be like, that's the one that's the most deficient. So what is it about the Koenig that is I mean, it probably does whatever it was designed to do well, but it's not what you're looking for, right?
Yeah, it doesn't have a big motor on it.
Okay.
That's the biggest drawback on it. It has a 3/4 horse motor, whereas my Vicmark and the Powermatic both have 3-horse motors.
Okay.
So it is that lathe is really designed as a spindle lathe.
Okay.
So it is designed to do, rungs for chairs or for, spindles for a railing, stuff like that. That's what that lathe is really designed for. And that's just not the type of turning that I really like. I was kind of excited about the spiraling attachments because I'm like, I can really do some cool stuff with, like vases or whatever. But the more I started looking at it, I'm like, the swing is so small on it. Like I couldn't do a real big like fluted bowl. You're stuck into the rotation of the pulleys that you have, which is only one size, so I can't change the pitch of the rotation. So I was like, if I can sell it and get, $600 out of that lathe, which I think it's worth every bit of it. I actually think it's probably worth, much more than that, but I don't ever try to, rip people off. I think that's a very good price on that lathe. So I think for that price, I can buy an aftermarket spiraling attachment for one of the other lathes.
Okay.
And have it be more useful to me in my shop. Is it a cool old lathe? Yeah, but it's kind of like that weird, like, it's like the Pinto of the car world, of the lathe world. You know what I mean? Because it's not old enough to be a classic. It's not like a vintage American lathe yet, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's like a weird, like, late 70s, early 80s lathe where stuff was people were trying to kind of figure out what the new lathe market would be. So yeah, it's
the AMC Pacer.
Yes. So, and there's a center steady on it. And again, it's one of those, if I get a couple $100 out of it, or several $100 out of it, it's like, okay, I'll buy a bigger center steady for one of my bigger lathes. And it's very low. So it's actually not very comfortable for me to turn at. I've turned a few things at it. I have. Yeah. It's much lower. It's probably a good 8 inches lower than the Powermatic or the Vicmark.
Oh.
So it'd be really good for like somebody like Phil's height,
Wow.
But don't
talk about going low.
Yeah. Wow.
Jeez.
Sorry, no, just
twist
Phil
my
and I are like
shop
the same
stool
height
down a little bit. I know.
Yeah.
That's the funny
Phil
part.
and I are like the same height, so I just think it's funny that somebody classified Phil from the TV show as the short one.
As
I'm
the
like,
short one.
we're the same height. Yeah,
Not
we're the same
not
height.
the host or the guy with the sideburns or
Nothing else.
No, it's the short one.
Just the short one.
It's your whole personality.
Yep.
Oh my god. Oh, but anyways, no. It's a little shorter. So I'm bringing Pat to the Des Moines Wood Turners tomorrow for demos. He has one in the morning and the one in the afternoon tomorrow. So I'm gonna let Stan know, hey, I'm gonna send you some pictures to see if I can at least find somebody local that's interested in it, because I feel like somebody in the Turners would be like, hey, yeah, that seems like that'd be cool.
Yeah.
I think
because I was going to say, I felt
cool,
like it wasn't a bad
stuff.
lathe.
Oh, it's not. I think for like the construction of it, it's actually a really rigid little lathe for how it's constructed. Because most modern lathes are going to have a cast iron bed, and then there will be hardened steel ways on it. The nicer lathes, like the Powermatic and the Vicmark, have really like thick, like 1 inch thick ways on it. This one, instead of having cast iron ways, it has like extruded steel ways.
Okay.
So they're like tubes, but it's really rigid for what it is. Now, again, it's what I'm classifying as a spindle lathe because it doesn't have a huge swing. It maybe will swing a 10-inch piece of wood.
Right.
But so you don't need a ton of weight there because spindles generally aren't that out of balance. but it's German engineering, man. It's like the epitome of German engineering. So I'm hoping that I can find somebody that would be like, hey, this is really cool, and that and has the time to really experiment and play with it and be like, look at the cool stuff that this can do. I hope I find somebody to buy it and they send me pictures of what they've done with it, and I'll be like, oh, I should have kept it. That's my ideal situation. So, but I mean, for example, it's light enough that Pat and I lifted each end of it and set it on a set of rolling carts. You know, it's not that Powermatic. Pat and I got it into my shop yesterday, and the bed on that thing has to weigh 400 pounds,
right?
Without the legs. I mean, the entire lathe is 850 pounds. It's heavy. I mean, one of the legs on this Powermatic weighs the same amount as this Koenig. So,
okay,
yeah.
Like I said, because I don't, not being a turner, it's hard to look at a lathe and know what you're looking at or what you're not seeing.
Yeah. So,
that Powermatic lathe, did we get that from Powermatic when we started the TV show? Was that one of the original tools?
Yes.
And it sat on the pallet in there for 10, 12 years, probably until you started, Logan, because we didn't do any turning.
Yeah.
It was in place in the editor shop, I think.
Because I just feel like
maybe it wasn't.
Nobody did any turning, and it sat in that corner.
I feel like it was still on the pallet. The same thing with that big the
bandsaw,
the 15-inch bandsaw too.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been. I mean, I have, which is funny because when I started working on that lathe, it wasn't very long after I started turning that I realized that the power switches were going out on it, the on-off switches. So it's like all hot wired, and I think it's the VFD actually going out. I've done a little research on people that have those early 2000s Powermatics, and it sounds like it's the VFD starting to go. But yeah, I mean, I think I probably have used that lathe tenfold more than anybody else. Just because, again, nobody turned, and I was like, hey, this is something I'm really interested in. So that's when I started using it. I mean, it's not, if you ask, there's a gentleman that owns a lathe manufacturing company up in the northern part of the U.S. I'm not going to name the name. And I've talked to him several times, and he has said, he's like, that's the worst lathe ever made.
Whoa.
And he said, now he is the manufacturer of a very high-end lathe, okay?
Right.
He does say that the Powermatic 2020 or 2035, this little bit smaller version, is a great lathe. And he'll say that. He's not a fan of that big lathe, and there are quirks about it. And I will 100% say that. There are quirks about it. And I think the electronics are probably the weak point of it. But for what I'm doing, I'm going to set it up as my hollowing lathe. I'm going to put the hollowing system on it and not take it off because it's kind of a pain in the butt to get tuned up and running how I want it to. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to order a new VFD, which is, I don't know if I want to go down we've talked about the VFDs I put on my other stuff, on other podcasts. I don't know if I want to go down because there's some certain parameters there's a potentiometer to control the speed. There's a forward and reverse switch. And all of that stuff needs pre-programmed, and you have to be able to hook it up to the right spot on the VFD because there's a row of terminals with different letters on there.
Oh, yeah.
I just don't know if I want to mess with that. I think I would rather just, for my time and not stressing about it, just say, okay, I'm going to grab the VFD from Powermatic. It's going to be, $850 and just replace it, get it back to how it would have been
right
when I first started using it before I broke it.
Yeah. Well, especially if you're going to use it for demos and teaching, because the last thing you want to do is to have to go through a student and be like, okay, now you're working on this lathe. Let me tell you how you start it. First, you have to.
Yeah, that's right. Prime the gas.
Prime the gas.
Pull the choke. Yep.
Yeah. Up, down, BA, BA.
That's right. Yep. Well, and actually, as far as I know, no, that lathe was not on the pallet when I started, but I don't think it was very far off of it because somebody had disconnected the remote on off switch because there's a secondary magnetic switch that you could put like towards the tailstock.
Oh,
so like if you're hollowing, you can have an on off switch right next to you instead of the headstock. That's always been disconnected since I had used that lathe. So, which, we would never disconnect an emergency stop button ever. So, never.
Why would you even think about that?
I don't know. It's a safety feature. You need to have it.
Mm-hmm. I think you could put one of those like treadmill clips on it. And then like if you get sucked into the lathe, it'll disconnect and shut off.
So, it's funny. We were Pat and I were talking this morning as we were having coffee and stuff. He's like he's been sending his daughters back in Ireland pictures of the TV set and stuff, and I forwarded him the picture of all of us with Pat this morning, and he sent it to him, and she was so excited because Phil had a plaid shirt on, and she's like, it's really like Tool Time. Like the TV show. She's like, they really wear plaid. And then we were talking about the Tool Time show, and there was one episode where they had a lathe on the show, and I think Al or Tim was standing next to the lathe, and somebody turned it on, and it rips his shirt off. I mean, it just like
the
boom,
shirt gets sucked in.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Perfect. The exercise clip, that's a genius idea, though.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You just need to have a way to have it spin down and stop real quick. Which made me think of like, what would lathe stop look like? Saw stop, but just for a lathe.
Yep.
Like,
oh, man.
I think the whole thing would flip over.
I will be interested, on that note, I will be interested to see it. I know that SawStop is working on developing other machinery.
I've heard that.
So they're looking to bring their SawStop type technology into other machines. I don't know if they're bandsaws. I don't know if they're joiners. I don't know what they are. But be interested to see what that mechanism looks like. Kind of like you're saying for lathe, like, is it going to be a cartridge like a saw stop, like a table saw? I would think you'd be able to find a way to do it.
Yeah.
But
it'd be like being able to find a way to do it without destroying the machine.
Yeah.
I could have used a belt sander stop before.
Same thing. And those hurt too.
Yeah.
Like braiding away a part of your skin. I've done that.
Yeah.
I did that.
There's no stitching up like a sanding burn.
No. It's like pre-cauterized.
You just got to patch it. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. Yup. Oh man. No, I mean, because like the big Laguna bandsaw in the shop, that has a foot brake on it, which I really, really like. I don't know that I will ever have a bandsaw other than the Big Crescent that doesn't have a foot brake. It is so nice, especially if you're holding a piece down, you tap the foot brake. There's a little toggle switch in there, so when you hit the brake with your foot, the micro switch shuts this off, and you can stop that saw fairly quickly with that. So I would assume like some form of like disc brake type thing, like a little bicycle brake, would do it, I would think. I don't know how you'd stop like a jointer, or the one that I would like to see would be a router table brake.
Okay. I mean, you'd have to have a dedicated spindle in it, I would think then, but
yeah, you couldn't use a router. You'd have to have a spindle.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It'll be interesting. It might be 10 years down the road, but I know that there's big development team there that's working on it.
Yeah. All right, I think that wraps up another episode of the Shop Notes Podcast. If you have any comments about turning or lathes or what you look for in a lathe, I'd love to hear about it. You can put that in the comments section on our YouTube channel or send us an email, woodsmith@woodsmith.com. Special thanks to Epilogue Laser for sponsoring today's show. They have a variety of products that'll help you customize your woodworking projects, and especially if you have it as a side hustle or regular hustle, in fact, to help you make unique products to sell. You can check it out at epiloguelaser.com. Special thanks to the people who subscribe to Shop Notes Magazine, Popular Woodworking, and Woodsmith Magazine. You're the ones that make it possible for us to do this podcast, and thank you. We'll see you next week. Bye.